Welcome to Bourgeois. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching. Today I'm in another episode of conversation. And so sometimes once in a while I'll sit down with a different entrepreneur that's in a different field and talk about the field that they're in, why they choose that field, and what's their strive for the future in that field. Today I'm here with a good brother of mine by the name of
Jere.
Joey. He like when I met him, I know him by Renaissance Man. I keep that's the name I keep in my name.
Right.
And when I come out with that, I was trying to figure out. Wait, I forgot. I didn't know about Renaissance. I don't think they know that's Renaissance because you changed your name on Instagram.
Yeah, that was my online, personal branding, Renaissance. We're just always trying to, create opportunities and, how we used to create opportunities for each other back in the day. So that's where the whole Renaissance part came from. And so I switched up the online branding, so that probably threw you for a loop.
It did, because when I was back to your name, I was like, wait, this name change is like,
Hampton Fred is
Hampton Fred.
that's my new brand.
Who's Hampton Fred before
okay.
Let's start the conversation. Who's Hampton Fred?
So Hampton Fred is a persona that I created, and I sort of modeled it after Fred Hampton, who was obviously a young black revolutionary who met a very early and untimely demise. And so I just identified with his genius at such a young age, but his love for his people, right? And so the reason that I switched it around from Fred Hampton to Hampton Fred was because it's my goal to approach the fight for equality in a little bit of a different manner, right? And so my goal is to infiltrate, the upper echelons of industry and society via like a New York Hamptons type of a society, that type of vibe, but still maintain the roots of the original Fred, right? So as opposed to approaching it from a very confrontational, not necessarily saying that Fred Hampton was confrontational, but it could be whatever at any given point in time. And so we still want to maintain our love for our people, but I just think for me, I want to switch it up as far as the approach is concerned. So that's where the Hampton part led, but we still maintain the ideals of Fred Hampton.
So I know you're doing real estate now as a real estate entrepreneur. Why real estate?
So I'll take you through the original plan, because that's how you're going to really understand how myself and a few of my colleagues made it into the real estate business. So if I could just take you from the early days when I wasn't in real estate, and then that'll give you a better understanding of how I made it into this particular area of the business. So back in the early 2000s, I was in school in Tallahassee, Florida A&M University.
Nice. HBCU?
Yeah, HBCU.
Well, HBCU.
Yeah, absolutely. Salute. And in my circle, we had a few friends whose fathers at that particular point in time were investors in the stock market. And so we would have very, very brief conversations every now and then about the stock market. So to make a long story short, when I graduated in early 2000, I was actually visiting here in Orlando. I came to visit a young lady who was my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And so when I was here, I just was looking in the newspaper. That was when they still advertised jobs in the newspaper. Now it's all online. And so there was a ad there that stated stockbroker trainee program, no experience necessary, will train. So, I didn't really know a lot about it, but from the brief conversations that I did have about it, I came to understand that it was a very lucrative industry. So I said, what the heck, I'll go ahead and I'll give it a shot. So I went to the interview, and it turned out to be a pretty good interview.
Yeah.
And so, I ended up enrolling into the broker trainee program. So I traded equities for a number of years internationally. We traded with clients from Ireland, Europe, Spain, all over the country, all over the world. And a lot of the rebuttals that we would get from our clients at that particular point in time, this was mid-2000s, market was booming. Obviously we went through the whole dot-com bust and all of that, and the housing bust at the end of the decade. And so a group of friends of ours, we kind of got tired of the market going up and down, up and down, up and down, which we had no control over, right? So we remembered that a lot of our clients would tell us that they were invested in real estate. For our international clients, they referred to real estate as bricks and mortar.
What year was that?
This was like from 2001 to 2008.
2001, 2008.
Yeah. And so, we thought, listen, if we're going to make a break, what we want to do is we wanted to deal with the same type of clientele, high net worth investors, but we wanted to deal with a different type of an asset. So with the stock market, they're all intangible. It's all computer money, right? And it's tough to be a day trader or a trader of individual equities on a day-to-day basis. You kind of have to be in one of the big Wall Street brokerage firms with all the big data and the big technology in order to compete. We didn't have that. And so we decided that we would go into the natural direction. If we wanted to deal with the same type of clientele, we were going to go into real estate. And so that's how
is it this company you were with, or like it was a
no? So
company?
we launched the company at that particular point in time, and the main reason that we launched the company at that particular point in time was because what we found once we were making the transition from the equities market to the commercial real estate business is that commercial real estate talent scouts, they had a different type of an individual that they were looking for. They were looking for young folks who didn't really have a lot of experience, who could be trained in their own specific ways of that particular firm, or they were looking for individuals who had already achieved some form of an experience in commercial real estate, right? So we had neither, but we were very successful traders, and so we thought that that particular experience would translate, but it didn't.
It didn't, because it's two different mindsets.
Exactly, and we were minorities. There's just not a whole lot of minority individuals, brokers, owners in the commercial real estate business, and so that was somewhat an anomaly as well, that we believe made it a little bit more difficult for us to land at one of the bigger brokerages. So we launched our own firm. And
what was the name?
The Portfolio Group.
The Portfolio Group.
Yeah,
right.
and so our
So
goal.
that'll be like around 2008-ish.
Yeah, 2008, 9. Yeah.
That'd be tough though, because there was the market crash.
Well, and the reason that we were not afraid to launch at that particular point in time is because when we came into the equities business, it was right after September 11th. And so if you remember, obviously that was a huge disastrous day for the United States of America regarding, the history of terrorist attacks on our soil. And so can you imagine being a young broker that is being forced to stay on the phone, don't put the phone down, regardless of what the news is saying, and to try to continue to manage a business and to build a business in the midst of one of the most significant tragic events that happened that affected the financial markets.
I think that's the tragic time since Pearl Harbor.
Well, I'm not that big of a historian buff, but it sounds like it would be comparable.
In the American soil, I mean.
Right. It sounds like it would be comparable. But so that particular experience, I think, taught us to just stay focused and to stay at it, and it hardened us a little bit. And I think that particular type of difficulty coming into an industry fresh, and you had to deal with it, I think that made us better brokers at that particular point in time. So again, to answer your question, when we came into the commercial real estate market, it was a similar type of doom and gloom with the bust of the real estate market, in the late 2000s. But again, we felt as though that would be a great time for us to really learn the business and to learn the ropes. Because if you can survive in the worst of times, you should be able to thrive when times are better. And so that was our goal. And so again, because we were having so much difficulty attempting to gain entry into some of the bigger brands, the bigger houses, brokerage houses, we launched our own. And so one of the things that we kind of were forced to do is, because we were new in the business, we didn't have a name, we didn't have a reputation, we kind of began to deal with some of the property owners that own the worst buildings in the worst areas.
So that would be my follow-up question.
Okay.
As a minority who started their own brokerage real estate firm, what was the difficult part of growing that business?
Right.
Because now you want to grow that business, but you will find it hard to get a good customer because of
Right. So that was a legitimate realization for us, despite the fact that we were young guys who had just come out of an industry and a long run career-wise where we made a lot of money. I made $1 million net before I was 30 years old. So, if you've taken that type of an experience, that type of a track record into a brokerage house, you would expect them to understand that even if this guy is not the ideal candidate, based on his track record and his success ratio, we should be able to find a way for him to help us. But that didn't happen. And so, actually, I'm grateful for that experience right now, because things may have turned out different. And so what we had to do was we had to go out and we had to find a way to survive. And for us, that ended up being taking on some of the projects and some of the assignments that other brokers were not interested in. And primarily, they were in inner cities, older buildings in better areas, but they just needed a lot of TLC. So in the commercial real estate business, there's multiple classes of real estate, right? So class A, that's like, white collar, fairly new development, like the Plaza, CNL Center downtown, Bank of America building downtown. Those are considered class A assets, right? And so typically the brokerage firms that are going to have the best opportunities to land those type of assignments are the larger, bigger brokerage houses. And so they were not focused on some of the older assets that needed a lot of work. They needed a lot of innovation. They needed a lot of...
Like some historical buildings?
Right, historical buildings. We worked a lot in those as well. And so it was just buildings that we considered to be B and C class buildings, right? And so our goal was to go in there, learn the ropes, learn how these buildings work, use this as an opportunity to learn from the bottom up, right? And so that's what we did. And so the funny thing about it was it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise for us, because once we learned how to transform older buildings and make them more competitive, renovate those buildings, restore those buildings, then we started to lure in some of the same potential clients or tenants that would typically be looking to go into other buildings that were nicer. And so we began to build our brand, we began to build relationships. And now, if you look at a lot of what's going on in and around town, there's a lot of restoration of old buildings. There's a lot of repositioning of older assets. There's what we call opportunity zones, where there's tax breaks to go into some of these same areas and acquire real estate assets, reposition those assets, and to create opportunities, to create wealth and to create revenue and to transform some of these neighborhoods. But we've been in that space for quite some time, so we understand that intimately, and that is a skill set that not every broker has. Actually, I would say a small percentage of brokers in the commercial real estate business has that particular intimate type of knowledge, which would put you in a situation where you can take any building, whether it's a class A, B, C, or a D that's falling down, and create something that's going to provide some sort of a revenue and provide some sort of a wealth creation opportunity for the owner of that asset. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was a long way around. We refer to it as coming in the back door of commercial real estate, right? We came in the back door, now we're on Front Street.
Nice.
But I didn't mean to cut you off, but to hone down on the question that you asked initially in terms of what do Black entrepreneurs typically have to do in order to survive, I think the short answer to that is whatever you have the opportunity to do. Take the low-hanging fruit and create other opportunities from that low-hanging fruit. It may be a lot more work. It may not be fair. You may not get paid as much. You may not get paid as often. But what you would be doing is you would be building your ability to handle different tasks and your ability to take more difficult assignments, which, let's face it, man, the majority of what we do in this business, if you're looking at it from a holistic perspective, your goal should be to take this asset and make it more profitable, right? Whether that's through improvements in the property, improvements in the quality of tenants that you're putting in, improvements in the way that the building is being managed. So if you're looking at it from that viewpoint, which starting low and having to work your way through is going to give you opportunities to look at all of those different angles, I think that's going to better prepare you for future success, as opposed to just going in and saying, hey, just lease this building. You don't know a whole lot about it. Only thing you know how to do is go and find somebody to move into that building, right? So you really aren't being all that you can be for your client which being all that you can be for your client, in my experience, is how you create long-term, lasting relationships, which are going to present you with long-term opportunities to create revenue.
Awesome. You definitely put out some gem, man. I didn't need to have to ask too many questions. So what can you tell? I guess you already said. What are you doing yourself to help young youth who kind of like interested in real estate but doesn't know exactly what field do you want to go in the real estate business?
Right. So to be honest with you, I'm kind of just getting started in that particular area right now, and it may be a little late because I've been in the business now for 8 or 9 years, but it's taken me a while to really learn the ropes. As I explained to you, that was a long way around to solidify my position in the business, and so I've really gone from surviving.
I mean, more like in a family one. It's not easy.
It's not easy. So you have to survive for quite a while before you can begin to thrive, right? And so I'm right there knocking on the door of the thriving part of it, right? And so when you're in survival mode, you don't really have a whole lot of time, to mentor. Of course, I have individuals that, they seek me out for advice. And for information, and of course I give of my time and my information when I'm sought out freely, but now I think I need to transition to seeking out opportunities to impart wisdom and knowledge and understanding on the generations that are coming up under me, because even right now, I've been in this business for quite some time, and there's a very limited amount of minority brokers, owners, whatever, in this particular business. A very, very small percentage. So it's tough, right? But somebody has to go in, they got to kick the door down, they have to deal with a lot of the no's, they have to deal with a lot of the nonsense that the first early disruptors are going to have to deal with. And so that's something that those of us who are in this position, we have to understand that you almost have to take 1 or 2 or 3 for the team before you can really begin to bring others in, right? And so I've done that, and again, to answer your question, now I'm at the point where this year that is on my goal board, my vision board, to be out there more, making myself available to those who may have a future in the business but don't know how to get in. But I had to learn the business before I could teach the business. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, what is, I guess you may already said it, what is your 5-year goal from now? Okay, so my 5-year goal from now is to transition from being a broker to an owner, right? Yes.
And so, for me, I plan to be in this business for quite some time, another quarter century, right?
Tell me, that's right now, not to cut you off, that's 4 things you need to in this as an entrepreneur. You need real estate, technology,
absolutely,
and investment.
Absolutely,
you got all those. I don't even need 4. You
absolutely.
need those 3.
Absolutely,
and you should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So part of my goal is to get on the other side of the phone, right?
Yeah.
In my business, even when I was trading equities, that was always the goal, right? To be one that's being called upon, to be exposed to investment opportunities as opposed to me doing the chasing.
Chasing, yes.
So, and then in this business, as it is with any entrepreneurial pursuit, I refer to it as there are no 401ks, for entrepreneurs. You have to create your retirement. You have to create your nest egg. And for me, the part of that is going to be significant commercial real estate holdings, right? I already have a couple of residential, but those are a little bit more maintenance intensive.
Like residential that you own?
Yeah. So I have a couple of single family residences.
You put in renting and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
but my goal is to acquire commercial. Retail assets, retail plazas and things of that nature.
I watched the Breakfast Club, and DJ Envy brought a guy who called Caesar, and he was explaining the amount of income you can bring from a real
Oh,
estate
it's
commercial.
unlimited. It's unlimited.
It's unlimited. Imagine if you a person who lucky who got a commercial property next to a college.
Right.
Imagine if you somebody who require a commercial property in the middle of a city like
Right.
downtown.
Right.
You know how much revenue you will be.
Absolutely.
You're dealing with millennial or people who
Absolutely.
doesn't like that's constantly. You're pretty much like a bank. You got like every month a substantial amount of cash
Absolutely.
coming
Absolutely.
to your pocket.
Absolutely,
You know what I mean?
absolutely, yeah. That's 100% correct. You know, so I see a lot of times in this business. For instance, one of my clients, they bought a building. I want to say 10 years ago, maybe a little over 10, maybe 11 or 12. But you know, for simplicity purposes, they bought the building for about $3.5 million.
Wow.
They utilized.
Is it Orlando?
Yes, in Orlando. They used the building for quite some time for their firm, right? So they enjoyed those benefits as well. And then a number of years ago, we moved them out. They were the majority occupant in the building. The building's about 40,000 square feet. They were occupying about 30,000 of that 40. So we moved them out into another building where they could have all of their space on one floor. And then we began to renovate the building and reposition the building. It's a historic building. So we took it from more of an old, stuffy, dark, historic building to a more vibrant, thriving, place for creatives. So we
You
have.
switch to commercial? Did you switch it to residential?
No, it's all commercial. Yeah, it's all
Okay.
commercial. So we have, technology startups in there. We have architecture firms, engineering firms. But we were able to create substantial value. So they bought that building for $3.5 million. They utilized it, so they benefited from it while they were occupying the building, and now the building is starting to cash flow as well. And then we'll probably put the building, now that we've renovated the vast majority of the building, we installed good tenants, we'll put the building on the market for around $9 million.
Oh, they're planning on selling now?
Yeah, they're planning on selling now. So, they went from 3.5 million. They enjoyed some of the tax advantages from having your business located in the building.
That's perfect time to
now,
sell.
they've enjoyed some revenue creation over the last few years.
Yeah.
Now it's time to
So
sell.
they'll make double income because
triple.
revenue
Right.
plus
Right.
plus the sales they're gonna make from that.
Exactly. So
And
you
then-
go 3.5 million to 9 million, a little over a decade. We find opportunities like that for us. Then that's what it means when I say I want to be
Are you the
an
seller?
owner.
Are you the
as
seller
opposed
on
to,
that property
a
as
broker.
well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the goal. That's the goal.
No, I mean the seller of the building.
As my firm, am I going to manage the marketing and the sale of the asset?
Yeah,
oh yeah, for sure,
That's a nice
Yeah.
return in there.
Yeah. Not to mention, that was a long-term client of mine, so we've created opportunities to generate revenue for the brokerage firm over the last decade. Whether that came from new leases, lease renewals, whether that came from tenant improvements or construction projects that we manage. There's all sorts of ways that you can create opportunities to make revenue inside of one building if you're looking at it from that particular approach. And not every broker does. But again, that was one, going back to it, because I want to keep harping on this, that is one of the benefits of not shying away from the difficulties that we experienced early. We stayed the course and we made it make sense. You have to make the struggle make sense, or you're going to miss some of the opportunities to learn within that struggle if you to focus on the struggle itself. So we had to switch from being focused on the struggle itself to how can the struggle benefit us? Short term, intermediate term, long term. How can we monetize the struggle, right? How can we look at it from a different viewpoint and actually think of it in a way where it benefits us? Right? Because that's tough to do in the middle of a struggle, because you got a family to feed, you're trying to eat, you know what I mean? There are no guaranteed checks. You have to go out, and whatever you kill is what you eat. And if you don't hunt, if you don't catch what you hunt, then you're not gonna eat. You know what I mean? And so you have to
definitely put that hunger behind it. If
absolutely,
you really want to.
absolutely. Well, you have to be hungry to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
That's the only way that you're gonna make it. You're not gonna make it as an entrepreneur if you're not hungry, and if you're not able to deal with adversity, and downtime and time management and money management. A lot of times nowadays, we're in the pop culture phase of life, and you know, everything on the internet, on TV, you know, it makes the whole entrepreneurial aspect, that lifestyle, look very glamorous. And
It's not glamorous at
yeah,
all.
it can be. It can be.
The reward
Right.
glamorous.
Right.
Not in the
Right.
beginning. Not
Right.
in the
Right.
beginning.
Exactly. But I also think that you have to not get down based on what's going on in your life. Like for me, every day I wear a coat to work. You know what I mean? And that's been a philosophy that I adopted a long time ago, because I look like I play the game. I want to feel like I'm playing the game. You know what I mean? And so it's for me, I have to look a certain way and act a certain way, and I have to go out and do something every single day that, you know, really gets my blood boiling. And for me, it's the chase, right? And so again, there's going to be in the scale up part of entrepreneurism, there are going to be a lot of days where you're wearing a coat with nowhere to go. You understand what I'm saying? But you can't adjust the way that you look and the way that you feel, because the results may not be aligning or lining up with that. You still have to maintain that feeling, that energy. It has to be a lifestyle, right? Entrepreneurism is a lifestyle, and eventually you'll look up and you're gonna be close to your goals, you know. But every day you got to go out feeling like you belong in this game. That's the only way, in my opinion, that you're gonna be able to sustain the bumps and the bruises, the ups and downs over the long term. It got to be a lifestyle for you. You know, when people see you, they might be like, man, I don't know what that guy does, but he looked like he enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to, for me, that's important, right? Because it's enough to point at and to think about, you know what I mean, to get you in a mood, so to speak. You got to fight to stay out of those moods.
Well, thank you so much for the knowledge you share with us today. I hope everybody that's watching, who's gonna watch, able to learn from that, and then that'll help you, guide you, whether if the real estate is a route. You don't have to be a real estate entrepreneur, but you want to be an investor. Definitely it will give you enough knowledge to know, okay, I definitely want to be part of that field in any sort of way. This is Bourgeois with Jared, with another episode of Conversation. Until next time, guys, peace. All right.